history of rock and roll, few stories are as unlikely as this. A kid from Virginia who'd become the backbone of not just one, but two of the most influential bands of all time. He's a drummer who hits like thunder, but smiles like sunshine. The man who defined grunge, then reinvented himself as one of rock's most beloved frontmen. Most people know him as the guitarist who founded the Foo Fighters, not realizing they're watching one of the most innovative drummers of our time, hiding in plain sight. But to understand what makes Dave Grohl an extraordinary drummer, you need to understand the paradox. A drummer who hits like a freight train, yet subtle enough to serve the song. As Kurt Cobain once said, they're all good, but Dave is the best I've ever known. Dave Grohl's journey as a musician is not just about talent, it's about resilience. Artists have a way of coping through the expression of their art, but in 1994, art was the last thing on Dave Grohl's mind. He had sunk into a depression following the death of Kurt Cobain, not just a bandmate in Nirvana and singer, but a friend.
When Kurt died, I was lost. I was numb. The music that I had devoted my life to had now betrayed me. I couldn't bear to hear someone else's voice singing about pain or joy. It just hurt too much.
At this point, Dave had established himself as a key piece in the biggest band in the world. Sure, most of Nirvana's appeal was Kurt Cobain, but Dave was no shrinking violet on the drums. Dave was the perfect drummer for a band like Nirvana. Kurt Cobain's voice and guitar was almost supercharged, constantly on top of the beat, while bassist Chris was always pulling slightly back. Dave was able to ride that wave, supporting both, but helping to define it at the same time. What Nirvana had was so special for Dave that Kurt's death had him considering quitting music altogether. He found himself void of direction and motivation. In an attempt to get away from all that grief, he found himself traveling the world.
After Kurt died and the band was over, I decided, okay, I'm going to disappear. So I went to the Ring of Kerry in Ireland. And I was driving around in my rental car and I saw this hitchhiker kid. And I thought, well, maybe I'll pick him up. And as I got closer to him, I saw that he had a Kurt Cobain t-shirt on. And it was Kurt's face looking back at me. And I realized, like, oh, I can't outrun this, so I need to go home and get back to work.
This period of grief became a turning point. Dave channeled his pain into creativity and decided to hit the studio and form his own band. Before getting into the genius behind Dave's drumming, let's take it all the way back to the start and to what made him a powerhouse behind the kit. Before he was the Dave Grohl, he was just Dave, a kid from Virginia who swapped piano lessons for a pair of sticks and a dream.
I couldn't fit a drum set in my bedroom, and my mother surely wouldn't allow me to have it in the living room. I was learning how to play music by ear.
His mom, a teacher and classical musician, noticed Dave had this musical itch when he'd air drum to Led Zeppelin and Rush at the dinner table.
Without having a drum set, I would set up these pillows on my bedroom floor, and I would play along to records.
By 15, he'd upgraded from pillows and pots and pans to a kit held together by duct tape. By 17, he was playing dive bars, perfecting the art of loud. Little did he know his future involved less garage practice and more accidentally inventing grunge.
And I had these drumsticks that were like really fat. So the marching drumsticks and the pillows playing really fast hardcore, it didn't make me play drums like this. I was like, when I finally got on a real drum set, I just broke everything.
At 17, Dave joined the DC punk band Scream. Punk rock wasn't about technical perfection, it was about passion, chaos, and playing fast enough to outrun the venue's security. Scream's bassist Skeeter Thompson once said, Dave played drums like a tornado with a caffeine addiction. Dave's decision to drop out of high school and hit the road, surprisingly, wasn't met with resistance from his mother, Virginia Grohl. A public school teacher for 35 years, she understood that the traditional education system didn't work for everyone.
I think the advantage that I had was that she had been a school teacher for decades and had seen thousands of kids like me that didn't necessarily flourish or fit in that conventional learning system.
With his mother's support, Dave hit the road with Scream, embarking on a rock and roll survival camp. The band toured relentlessly, playing squats in Europe and dive bars across America. They slept on floors and survived on gas station nachos. These experiences forged Dave's never complain, just play louder mentality.
So from the time I was about 17 to the time I joined Nirvana, I was touring about 8 months out of the year. Get $7 a day and be able to eat and stuff. And you'd come home and you wouldn't really have any money, so we just tried to keep on tour so we could eat and stuff.
Dave said, "Punk taught me to play with my heart, not my head. If you messed up, who cares? Just scream louder and hit harder." Punk drumming is not necessarily sophisticated, but requires energy, passion, and a lot of pounding. This go hard or go home ethos became Dave's signature. It was a 1990 tour stop in Seattle where a friend of the band, Buzz Osborne from the group The Melvins, took some of his local friends to see Scream. Those guys were named Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic.
We went to see this band in San Francisco called Scream, and Kurt and Chris saw the drummer, listened to him for a while, and they said, "Wow, we wish we could get a drummer like that."
Soon after, Grohl auditioned for Nirvana. Kurt took one listen and said, "Finally, someone who hits drums like they owe him money." Chris later admitted, "We tried 50 drummers. Dave was the only one who didn't make me want to jump into the Puget Sound."
Dave's solid, and he's a natural musician. I mean, he can play anything, guitar, bass, drums, sings. I mean, he's just a great musician. He makes it sound so easy, so he's easy to play with.
Grohl's genius, mixing punk's raw energy with melodic simplicity. Take Smells Like Teen Spirit. That iconic intro isn't just a drum fill, it's a primal scream in rhythm form. In Nirvana, Dave took the punk rock lessons of Scream, where he learned to drive songs and beat the shit out of his drum set, but then added subtle pop elements. Things like hi-hat accents when the ride cymbal was the main tempo driver. It's the things you don't really hear, but the things you feel, like combining punk rock with disco, a genre which weirdly happened to be a big influence on him.
If you listen to Nevermind, the Nirvana record, I pulled so much stuff from the Gap Band and Cameo and Tony Thompson on every one of those songs. All that. That's
Wow.
It's old disco. That's all it is.
But here's the kicker. Dave almost didn't join Nirvana. He initially thought, nah, these guys are too weird.
It was really hard for me to leave my buddies and join this new band of strangers. I just flew up there, fucking moved in with Kurt in this tiny little apartment, but there was the fucking music, and that was the thing that kept you alive.
Let's break down Dave's drumming into what makes it special. When most drummers hit hard, they lose tempo. But Dave, he's like a controlled demolition. Because Dave first started in punk, energy and passion are written all over his drumming style. He didn't have to play that sophisticated while in a band like Scream. That style cascaded into Nirvana, where again he was extremely effective amplifying the band's rhythmic propulsion while keeping excellent time. And much like all the drum greats, leads the song rather than some other instrument taking over. From now beyond. Nirvana was forward and simplistic. While Dave's drumming was undoubtedly great, the band's style required him to dumb it down in a sense. Nirvana didn't show all what Dave had to offer on the drum kit. His dexterous skills had still not been fully unleashed. That is, until he started the Foo Fighters. You can tell by their first two records that Foo Fighters was going to be a band that took full advantage of the drums in a more traditional rock-style approach. The drum rolls, the fills, the intense kick beats, and occasional odd time signatures really brought the drums to life in a way it never could in Nirvana. Not to say that it was better, as that it is subjective, but it certainly was more intricate, and that's because the Foo Fighters were Dave's band. He was the songwriter, the one leading the way.
Hi, my name's Dave Grohl. I play guitar and sing in Foo Fighters.
Now, Dave couldn't rely on one of the greatest songwriters in rock history. Dave dove headfirst into this new project he called the Foo Fighters.
So there was a studio down the street from my house, and I just picked like 12 of my favorite songs that I'd written that nobody had ever heard. From like 90 to 94, there was all this shit I'd recorded that I didn't really think anybody would ever hear.
He played every instrument, sang every note, and even did the album art. The demos were so good, labels thought it was a secret supergroup. Joke's on them, it was just Dave, his grief, and a lot of coffee. Dave has always had an itch for songwriting. In fact, the drums wasn't even his first instrument as a kid, it was a guitar. But when the main songwriter in your band is Kurt Cobain, you kind of stick to the drums.
It's almost like being George Harrison. George Harrison had great songs. The Beatles made him only have one song on an album. Kurt wouldn't let you have
but he was in a band with Lennon and McCartney. And I was in a band with Kurt. So it's that famous joke, like, what's the last thing the drummer said before he got kicked out? I got a song I think we should play.
Dave's drumming background taught him how to write songs. He thinks like a drummer, rhythm first, melody second.
The way I look at a guitar is like a drum set. I look at the lower strings like they're kicks and snares, and I look at these like they're cymbals. Really? So when I play, it's almost like a kick snare pattern. Like when you're playing the drums, when I play the drums, like in a verse, I'll play tight on a hi-hat or on a ride or something like that. But then when the chorus comes and I want to open it up, I'll wash on a cymbal. And I do the same thing on a guitar where I let the strings ring out in sort of like suspended notes. And I mean, nobody taught me how to do that. I just sort of thought like, oh, that sounds good.
This is why Foo Fighters songs feels so massive. They're built from the drums up. Listen to the simplicity of My Hero. His drumming builds tension without overshadowing the melody. The iconic intro and chorus are a perfect example of how less can be more. Dave eventually gave up the throne to another sensational drummer in Taylor Hawkins, that approach to songwriting stayed intact and is the sound of the Foo Fighters. Dave didn't just switch instruments, he created a whole new way of thinking about rock songwriting. He's not a drummer who learned guitar, he's a drummer who taught guitar how to groove. If you thought Dave would go soft as he got older and lean away from his punk roots, think again. Just as the Foo Fighters were gaining mainstream status, Josh Homme called Dave up one day with an offer that was pure rock and roll salvation. Queens of the Stone Age needed a drummer who could shake the earth. Then there's Grohl's work on No One Knows, a masterclass in controlled chaos. It's like he's wrestling a rhino and winning. Even his advice is memorable, yet so simple, it makes you want to sit and start drumming.
You don't have to stand in line at the song contest on TV to become a fucking popular musician. Fuck product placement and labels and A&R people and all that bullshit. It doesn't fucking matter.
Dave has gone on to drum for rock legend and Led Zeppelin bassist John Paul Jones alongside Josh Homme in Them Crooked Vultures. And let's not forget his iconic drumming with Tenacious D, whether it's the thunderous intro to The Metal or the epic showdown in Beelzebub. Dave brings the same intensity and precision to comedy rock as he does to grunge and alternative. While it's easier to pinpoint his drumming chops and songwriting abilities as part of Dave's musical genius, something not so obvious is his charisma. He's jammed with Paul McCartney, literally writing a song called Cut Me Some Slack with him, taught Animal from the Muppets how to rock, and once played drums for a 10-year-old fan's living room concert. Dave's a natural-born leader, and it's clear people are drawn to him. And his fails? They are even iconic. Remember that time he fell off stage mid-concert, broke his leg, then finished the show with a medic strapping him to a chair?
We've been a band a long fucking time, and some crazy shit has happened to us. This takes the cake.
Of course, Dave's life hasn't all been rock and roll fairy tales. Even the most beloved rock stars have their off-stage struggles, and let's just say, he's reminded us that even the nicest guys in rock aren't immune to making headlines for the wrong reasons.
Foo Fighters frontman Dave Grohl is fighting to save his marriage.
He fathered a child outside of his marriage to Jordan Blum.
So what makes Dave Grohl a great drummer? It's his heart. The dude plays every show like it's his last, writes every song like it's a love letter to rock and roll, and still acts like he's just some guy you'd grab a beer with. Sure, he's not as technical as jazz greats like Buddy Rich or as skilled as a John Bonham, but you can't deny he's a powerful drummer with great hands and a strong right foot. Is Dave among the world's best drummers? Not at all. It's not possible to count the many YouTube drummers who are more capable on the kit, but I'd guess 99% of them would trade their drumming superiority to have the full package that Dave brings to music. He's the bridge between punk's rage and pop's joy, a drummer who turned hit stuff hard into high art. As Maya Angelou once said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And Dave, he makes you feel every beat, every crash, every moment of pure, unadulterated joy. He's not just a drummer, he's a force of nature. A legend who reminded us why we fell in love with music in the first place. And honestly, what's more punk rock than that?